done any reading about Franklin, some people have incorrectly, I believe, and unfairly accused him of being a philanderer. He did have a legitimate child, a son, who became a governor of some state, New Jersey, I think. He had an illegitimate son before he settled down to his common-law wife of 44 years, and they had 2 children together. And as far as we know, that's the extent of his philandering. But, of course, we don't always know, and we almost never know a full person's background in that regard, or the full background. But he has probably, at least most people who have studied him well, he's probably been over mistreated in that regard. He was quite a flirt, which I, of course, am not. But you all know that I'm a flirt, and I enjoy it, and I like to make the ladies feel valuable and wonderful and intelligent and beautiful, and I'm totally non-threatening, I hope, to you when I do that. But he was quite the flirt and was very popular in social circumstances with the ladies because he could tell fantastically interesting stories. So whether he was that way or not, he said that it was a very, very good idea as one of his 13 virtues to practice chastity. And certainly, and there are actually multiple kinds of chastity, and we're kind of going to go into that, but the idea that we usually associate with it is physical chastity, and that is not very popular today at all. And when I was at Berry College, I went there as a junior, graduated from a junior college in Birmingham, and then went to the second 2 years at Berry College, and since I didn't take my English in their English department, I had to take a written essay test to prove that I had learned enough English to function as a college student at their school. And so we basically had to write an essay, and they gave us a bunch of subjects, and one of them was the new morality. Remember when that was out? This would be in the late 60s, I guess, and so the new morality had come out, you know, free love, free music, free food, and free drugs, you know, that kind of thing. And I took the position that there was no such thing, that it was just the same as it always was. We just talked about it more. And I suspect that that may be true today even. It may not have actually changed that much, except that we now talk about it even more than we used to, or we treat it more lightly than we used to. Perhaps it has gotten more prevalent, or the lack of chastity. But it may not be as much different as it was 100 years ago. I don't know. But I did take the position, rightly or wrongly, that there was no such thing as a new morality. It was just more discussion on it. By the way, I got an A+ on the thing and didn't have to take any remedial English. So it's kind of today, it's one of those things that, you know, we've just kind of made it so common. It's like, you know, paper towels. We just use it as a common commodity now. It seems like. It's everywhere we look, and it's kind of taken away the spiritual aspect of it, it seems like. Used to, when you were going together, it meant you were going steady. Remember that? When I was in high school, you would tend to date around, and then you would kind of settle in on one girl or guy, depending on whether you're a girl or a guy, and you would go steady. That's very different than what it means today. Now you go with someone and move in or whatever, and as long as you are faithful to them, everything is fine. In other words, it's almost like a marriage. And then you get mad at each other and you move on to the next person, and then you move in with them and everything's okay and nobody complains or objects or anything. So it's very odd looking nowadays. So I'm sad that has become so common, but I'm afraid it's a sign of our times. The Bible makes it very clear that physical chastity is extremely important. There are both health and mental reasons for it to be important. But even if that were not true, God has said that it's not good. In fact, I guess I've noticed that any sin, anything God has said He doesn't want us to do, is because it's good for us not to do it. Not just to be a meanie, but because it's good for us not to do that. And so I want to hit a couple of 3 verses, and then I'm going to change gears on you a little bit. Hebrews 13:4 says, marriage should be honored by all, and the marriage bed kept pure, for God will judge the adulterer and all the sexually immoral. That's pretty explicit, isn't it? 1 Corinthians, let's see. I actually have 2 of them out of order. I want to do 1 Corinthians 6, and it's a fairly long reading, verse 12 through 20. He starts out, he's talking to the Corinthians. You know how they were a problem for him, and he's quoting them. He says, I have the right to do anything, you say, but not everything is beneficial. I have the right to do anything, but I will not be mastered by anything. You say, food for the stomach and the stomach for food, and God will destroy them both. But the body, however, is not meant, now watch him jump from food to something else. The body, however, is not meant for sexual immorality, but for the Lord, and the Lord for the body. He didn't say it's not meant for sex. He said immorality. Whoa, lost my balance there. And the Lord for the body. By his power, God raised the Lord from the dead, and he will raise us also. Do you not know that your bodies are members of Christ himself? Shall I then take the members of Christ and unite them with a prostitute? Never! Do you know that he who unites himself with a prostitute is one with her in body? For it is said the 2 will become one flesh. Speaking of marriage. But whoever is united with the Lord is one with him in spirit. Flee from sexual immorality. All other sins a person commits are outside the body, but whoever sins sexually sins against his own body. Do you not know that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you have received from God? You are not your own. You were bought at a price. Therefore, honor God with your bodies. And 3 chapters earlier, he says, don't you know that you yourselves are God's temple and that God's Spirit dwells in your midst? If anyone destroys God's temple, God will destroy that person, for God's temple is sacred, and you together are that temple. And many, 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 many more similar type scriptures about immorality. There are numerous places where God will judge the murderer, the sexually immoral, the this, that, over and over and over and over again. Now, I want to shift gears on you, unless you wish to argue that that's acceptable to practice, and then you can have the floor if you wish. I want to talk about the term adultery. We use it to have a very specific meaning in the language, and it's generally used with a very specific meaning in the New Testament. And it has to do with being unfaithful to your spouse, usually. But there is a broader meaning to the word. Have you ever heard of something, the drink was adulterated, or the food had been adulterated with preservatives? What does that mean? What does it mean to adulterate a thing? It means to contaminate it with something. It was adulterated with E. coli in it. Therefore, it's not safe to eat. It's contaminated. It's adulterated. And so I want to use that broader meaning to talk about things that are pure and things that have been contaminated or adulterated. Now, this can actually be applied directly to the marriage relationship, in fact. And we talk about, he or she committed adultery, and we know what that means. But it is possible to adulterate the purity of your marriage without being physically unfaithful to your spouse. That is possible. If you hate your spouse, your marriage is horribly contaminated. If you abuse your spouse, your marriage is horribly contaminated. If you mistrust or are mistrustful or should be mistrusted, if you steal from one another, people do this, by the way. your marriage is adulterated. Now, I'm not telling you that that is justification for necessarily dissolving the marriage, but we need to be aware that adulteration is bad for the purity of any relationship. We can expand it beyond that and just talk about you and your friends. If you do things and use your friends in an inappropriate way, like you borrow money from them all the time and never pay it back, you've adulterated your friendship. You've misused and contaminated and destroyed the purity of your friendship. And many things could happen that would contaminate or adulterate a relationship with your spouse, a relationship with a friend, your relationship with the church. If you only take from the church and never contribute back anything of value, that relationship is contaminated. It's not pure. This is why if you are working with a person that has great need, and people say, well, you need to be their friend, that would be great. But as long as I am giving and they are only taking, that's not a friendship. I'm sorry. It's just not a friendship. And to call it a friendship is to contaminate the whole idea of relationship. When you are no longer the giver and they are no longer the taker and there is a common interchange back and forth, now you can start thinking friendship, okay? But until that happens, you don't have a friendship. You have an acquaintance maybe, at best. So, so keep in mind that the whole idea of keeping relationships of all type pure and not unhealthy and sick and contaminated. A lot of drug users have all of their friends are also drug users. But they're not really their friends. They have something in common. They do drugs together. Or they will use you to get their drugs. See, those are not friendships. That's something very sick is what that is. So the idea here that I'm trying to advance is the idea of if your heart is pure, you can avoid, hopefully, all of these other adulterated experiences, or at least minimize them or recognize them and try to fix them, which would also provide you with the desire to remain chaste and to remain faithful to your spouse. Because if your heart's pure, you're not going to want to do that to your spouse, right? Okay, if you love that other gal, okay, I'm sorry. You just don't make excuses, okay? Do what you have to do here. By the way, romantic love is a relatively new concept for marriage. It used to be that you just got married. Your mom and dad said, you're going to marry this girl. What? She's 6. You know, okay, you can marry her when she's 14. And you'll be 17 or 18. And she'll have 8 children, 6 of them will die, and she'll die at 33, and you'll die at 40. Things were very different some time ago. Romantic love is new. And so let me give an example. There are a lot of times that Tyra doesn't like me. I can't imagine why. But there are times that Tyra doesn't like me at all. I honestly don't know why that is. And on a few occasions in the past 44 years, I haven't liked her for 5 minutes. That doesn't mean I don't love her, because it's a different kind of love, isn't it? Yes, the eros type is very nice, thank you very much. But the lasting love is the agape love, where she puts up with me in spite of everything, and I have to spend 5 minutes a year putting up with her, you see. So she makes it easy on me. So there are good reasons to keep your relationship pure. Mark 7, verses 20 through 23. Jesus is talking. He's been giving the Pharisees a hard time about all their ceremonial cleansing and things that they've added to the Scriptures. What comes out of a person is what defiles them. What comes out is what defiles you. For it is from within, out of a person's heart, that evil thoughts come. Now here come the evil thoughts. The very first one is sexual immorality. Theft, murder, adultery, greed, malice, deceit, lewdness, envy, slander, arrogance, and folly. Gracious, I'm not even sure I can think of any more. All of these evils come from inside and defile a person. The devil didn't make you do it, okay? You made yourself do it. The devil just said, why don't you go ahead and do that? And you went, that sounds like a good idea. I think I will, you know. The longer I live, the more you remember the little cartoon things that showed the little devil with the pitchfork on one shoulder and the little angel on the other side talking to you? The longer I live, the more I believe that's a valid analogy of how God and evil work. God's always whispering in your ear, do the right thing, do the right thing, do the right thing, be good, be perfect. The devil's going, he's just trying to keep you from having fun. Have you ever heard those voices? I don't actually hear I don't actually hear voices. Sometimes I do. But that's how your thoughts go, right? Sometimes, I really should go do this. No, I don't want to do that. That won't be any fun. You know, I want to do this over here. So that analogy kind of hangs on pretty well. So whatever, the things that come out of you determine what defiles you. Psalm 51:10. This verse, this whole psalm was written after David committed adultery with Bathsheba. And he says in verse 10, create in me a pure heart. The word pure there is actually more correctly translated clean, but NIV says pure. Same thing. Create in me a pure heart, O God, and renew a steadfast spirit within me. He recognized that his heart was not pure, and that's why he did what he did. He was thinking of himself. Jesus said in the Beatitudes, chapter 5, Matthew, blessed are the pure in heart, for what? They shall see God. God doesn't want to see you if your heart's not pure. And you don't want to see God if your heart's not pure. But if you have a pure heart, you will see God. Philippians 2, verse 14 and 16 through 16. Do everything without grumbling or arguing, so that you may become blameless and pure, children of God without fault in a warped and crooked generation. Then you will shine among them like stars in the sky as you hold firmly to the word of life. Be blameless and pure. 1 Timothy 1:5. The goal of this command, he's talking to Timothy about several things. The goal of this command is love, which comes from a pure heart and a good conscience and a sincere faith. Philippians 4:8. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, I've done this one numerous times before, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about those kinds of things. Pure. You need to have a pure heart. Now, I told you I was going to take a different angle on this. You need to have a chaste, pure heart. And all that other stuff will fall in line appropriately. You know, I can't cheat on my wife. Well, if you say it that way, you're already in trouble, you know. You go, why would I ever want to do that? Even if I'm unhappy, why would I ever want to do that? I made a covenant. I would never do that. I don't want to do that. There's a song, and remember a couple of weeks ago or several weeks ago, I did several songs, and there's a song that's very appropriate to this particular subject. You probably know it. It's called Purer in Heart. It was written in 1877. It's a fairly short song, and I think I mentioned to you the last time I did some songs that I have a lot of favorites. This is one of my special favorites. I sometimes sing it. Hey, Miss Rosie, how are you? I don't think she can hear me. This is a beautiful, beautiful song. And if I could lead singing, I would probably do it. But unfortunately, if I sing it, I tend to cry on the last one anyway, so we won't do that. But I'll read it to you. And it's probably very familiar to you anyway, so you do the melody in your head. Purer in heart, O God, help me to be. May I devote my life wholly to Thee. Watch Thou my wayward feet, guide me with counsel sweet. Purer in heart, help me to be. Purer in heart, O God, help me to be. Teach me to do Thy will most lovingly. Be Thou my friend and guide. Let me with Thee abide. Purer in heart, help me to be. Last verse. Purer in heart, O God, help me to be, until Thy holy face one day I see. Keep me from secret sin. Reign Thou my soul within. Purer in heart, help me to be. This is the goal. A pure heart, a loving, pure heart is all God wants from you. Everything else falls in line behind that. Remember the 1 Corinthians 13, he's talking about love, 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 all the things that it is, and he gets to the end and he says, now abide faith, hope, and love, these three. But the greatest of these is love. And I mentioned this to you before. Love trumps faith. You can have super weak faith and great love, and you made it. You're good. I would love for my faith to also be strong, but if you can love, you've got it. This is why Christianity works even for a person with an IQ of 60. A dog knows how to love. In fact, they're the perfect example of love. They accept you as you are. You can beat a dog and it will still love you. Or try to, anyway. Can't do that with a cat. So, even a very severely retarded person can still understand love. They know what that is. Or most of them do anyway. Or, of course, some highly intelligent people don't even know what that is. But anyway, so pure in heart, help me to be. Now, what I'd like to do in the last few minutes of the class, anyone want to make a comment? I'm a lecturer. I just go like crazy. And unless you stop me, I just keep going. Bill, you haven't stopped me once this morning, buddy. You must be tired. You've been beating her again because she's not saying anything either. I do appreciate your comments when you make them, but being the type of person I am, I will go whether you comment or not. It just doesn't matter to me a whole lot. But I do appreciate it when you make those comments. I spent my whole career lecturing about radiation safety to people and writing papers and doing things, and most of the time they never ask a question. They just sit there, unless it's a much smaller room with about 8 people in it. And then I get lots of comments from a little conference room with about 8 people sitting around a table looking at each other is the best teaching environment there is, because they will talk then. But a big auditorium with 500 people in it, ain't nobody going to say anything. So what I want to do now is I want to bring up a slide presentation, which is really not all that elaborate. And we're going to quickly summarize the 13 virtues. I'm just going to briefly mention. We only have about less than 15 minutes to go. So I'm going to just briefly mention them. The first one that we covered, let me go through. You remember we were doing the autobiography of Ben Franklin, and in his 20s, he came up with this list of 13 virtues that he thought were good ideas to practice. And you recall that he said he worked very, very hard to mechanically achieve these things, and he kept records and did all kinds of cool things. My kind of guy for that sort of thing. And he concluded after a long, long time, he had a great procedure for it, but after a long, long time, he concluded that it was impossible to actually achieve all these virtues. He said, I could achieve one for short periods of time, but then I would fall off the wagon on another one. And I could sometimes do this one for quite some time, and then I'd lose the other one that I had going. He says, it's hard to concentrate on all these at one time. But he says it was a worthy endeavor because it made me a better man than I was. This is him in his 20s talking. Of course, he wrote it when he was much later. He wrote back the memory. So he's recognizing that it made him a better man as a result of trying to achieve these virtues. And these are the 13 that he chose. And I'm going to just quickly run through them. Believe it or not, we started this 4 months ago. It's how long it has taken to get through this. 4 months ago. So the first one is temperance. And temperance is one of those strange things that basically says you don't overdo stuff. You do it at a reasonable, at a temperate level. And his primary example, I think, was with regard to food in his thinking about that. So don't be a glutton. But that really applies to everything in life. And I think I mentioned in that class one thing Paul says you can do as much as you want to, and that was love other people. You can overdo that as much as you want to. Most other things you kind of need to keep it a little bit under control. Now, my kids know that if I say anything worth doing is, and they all go, is worth doing to excess. And what I mean by that is doing it until you're satisfied. You know, why would you go to the table, take 3 bites of food, and get up and walk away hungry? That's dumb. So, you know, eat until you're full, stop. You know, if you're going to go, we would go scuba diving, and we would scuba dive every day for 2 weeks, sometimes twice a day. People say, wow, that's a lot of scuba diving. No, I got my scuba diving tank filled. Now, if I went scuba diving every day of the year and neglected my family, that's totally different, isn't it? In fact, I almost did that one time, not with scuba diving. I got way into rocketry, amateur rocketry, big stuff. I got level 2 certification. I could put some of you 500 or 600 feet in the air if I had you tied to the rocket. And I was out one day where Home Depot is here in Oak Ridge. It wasn't there at the time, and we were launching rockets. And Tyra comes driving up with the children, and she says, we got to talk. I said, why, baby? She says, you're doing this way too much. She says, at night, you don't do anything but build rockets. And on weekends, you don't do anything but launch rockets. And you take a little time off to go to church, and then you head right back out to the rocketry field Sunday afternoon again. She said, we got to talk. I said, I really like doing the rockets. But I also like her pretty much too. So I said, okay, here's the deal. I'm shutting down, and I will not even think about rockets for the next month. And then I will slowly, with your guidance, get back into it. Because I had gone way overboard. I remember doing that. I didn't like it, but I knew it was important to do it. Okay, temperance. We got to keep ourselves whoa, I made another step there, didn't I? Got to keep ourselves under control, do things in reasonable levels, and he considered this the most important first one to learn because it helps you do the others if you can get some control. Silence was the next. Okay, silence is the next one. And I think we may have discussed how silence helps you think inside more. It gives you the ability to be introspective more. It's also just good for your body to have a little bit of silence every now and then. And we play the radio blaring all the time. We've always got the TV going, or we got the stereo playing, or we're yakking with somebody, or noise. Silence is good for you. And you need to practice that occasionally. Order. Okay, I know I've stopped preaching now and started meddling. A disorderly life is kind of a suggestion of a disorderly mind to me. If your life is chaos, and by chaos I mean you don't know where your car keys are ever, and you don't know if you have any clean clothes or not, because they're all piled up in the floor, and you don't know which ones you wore over the past 4 weeks or not, and your closet's empty. Okay, that's disorder, and that suggests that you are a disorderly person. Maybe, maybe not. Decently and in order. Thank you for that. And of course, the reason that's a difficult scripture is because what? Everybody's definition of decent and order is different, isn't it? So again, order is a definition that has some fluffiness to it. My idea of order is probably not your idea of order, okay? I'm a little, that. with regard to order. This morning our kitchen was an absolute mess. We had all the grandchildren and children there, and they were eating breakfast and everything. I said, okay, you guys don't clean up or anything. I'll take care of it when I get home. It's already clean. I took care of it. Couldn't stand it. I had to clean it up, you know. But I'll go home this afternoon, sit down in front of a football game and pretend to watch it and sleep all afternoon instead of having to clean up the kitchen. So it's good. Okay, next one. Resolution. This is basically being a responsible person. Resolving to do something good or appropriate and then doing it. Decide to do it and then do it. Make a commitment either to yourself or the person you're talking to or whatever, and then go do it. Resolve. And we talked about how those New Year's resolutions last about an hour and a half, maybe, if that long. Of course, what you usually do is you say, okay, starting in the new year, I'm going to lose weight. When New Year comes around, well, I got to eat, you know, Christmas dinner and everything, and then New Year's Day, we got to go to the ball game and eat, you know, tailgate. Okay, I'll start tomorrow. Tomorrow never comes, right? Resolve to do things and then do them. Frugality. Don't be wasteful. It's very easy to be wasteful in this world. Now, there are things that appear to be wasteful that are not, and there are things that appear not to be wasteful that are. Throwing away glass bottles that you can't use is not wasteful, okay? And by the way, you can't recycle glass. It's economically absurd. About the only thing you can do with recycled glass is grind it up and put it in concrete. That's about all you can do with it. We have lots of silicon dioxide in this world. It's called sand. That's what we make glass out of. In fact, silicon is one of the most common elements in the universe. So, you know, there are things where you can be frugal, things where you can be environmentally conscious, but try to be reasonable about it. Be frugal, but don't be a spendthrift or whatever it is. Don't be stingy. That's the word I was looking for. Don't be stingy, but be reasonable. Be frugal. Don't be wasteful, but be frugal. Industry. This has to do with a person who gets out and works, that doesn't lay around and wait for other people to work for them, you know, to look after them. Get out there and do some stuff. I know a lot of people who talk about what they want to be when they grow up. They're already grown. You know, they're 18, 19 years old. What are you going to do with your life? I want to be an engineer. What kind of engineer? Train driver? No. I want to be a nuclear, which is incorrect, by the way. It's nuclear. I want to be a nuclear engineer. Any good at math and science? Oh, I hate math and science. Where are you planning on going to college? I haven't thought about that yet. Well, when you do go to college, what are you going to major in? Oh, I don't know. I thought I might major in art. Okay, you're not going to be a nuclear engineer. You know, you're crazy. Lots of people will have plans that are unrealistic and crazy and stupid. And in fact, many times they will only think about the idea of what they want to do and never even put in place a plan or intent or anything. They just dream. Somebody's got to paint those radiation signs, but you're not going to be making $100,000 a year while you're doing that. By the way, I found out the other day, 2 days ago, an old girlfriend of our daughter's came over and visited. The gal stayed in Clinton, married here, and had her children. She's a wonderful young lady. Well, she's not that young. She's in her early 40s now. That's young. She has a couple of kids of her own, she and her husband do, and they keep foster children, which I greatly praised her for because I could never do that. And she loves them to death, I can tell. She smiles and just rolls her eyes back when she talks about them. But her husband is a fork truck driver over at Eagle Bend in Clinton for an auto parts manufacturing company. They make stuff for every car in the world over there. And in the process of conversation, now he's a fork truck driver, she revealed, maybe by accident, he makes $80,000 a year doing this. That's more than some doctors make. So you don't have to be a doctor. You don't have to be an engineer. You don't have to be a lawyer. You can drive a fork truck and make a decent living, okay? So there we are. Happy to have you here. So anyway, let's get out there and be a little bit industrious with our lives. Sincerity. There's nothing I hate more than somebody who's insincere. They will promise you stuff and never follow through. They will lie to you about stuff. I hate that. Just tell me outright you're not going to do it, okay? If that's what you're going to do. Don't deceive me, please. Sincerity. Let people be able to trust your word. If you say you're going to do something, by George, get out there and do it if you can. And if you can't, let them know immediately. As soon as you know you can't do it, call them and say, I know I told you I was going to do that, but it ain't going to happen because I broke my leg and I'm in the hospital. Okay, deciding you just don't want to do it's not a good excuse, okay? But you said you would do it. Sincerity. Justice. We, of course, want justice for everybody else but ourselves, certainly. I want mercy, right? Mercy and grace for me. And as Christians, we need to practice mercy and grace. But we need to be a just person. Treating people fairly and reasonably is what I think was meant by this. We need to treat people with respect and have regard for the rule of law, even if I don't like the law. Fairly and reasonable? Okay. There is a lot of stuff going on right now in the political scene, regardless of who you are politically. There's a lot of discussion about the college, electoral college. That may not be a good thing for us now, but you can't just negate it. We've done it for 240 years. It's part of our Constitution. If you don't like it, what do you need to do? What do you need to do? Float an amendment to the Constitution, run it through the system, and if it gets passed, then you get what you wanted. Otherwise, you can't just go, oh, it's unfair, we're just not going to do it. It's not going to do it. It's wrong. Can't have it. You know, can't do that. The speed limit, they're wrong. We can't follow that speed limit. The 20-mile-an-hour speed zone in front of the school during when school's out and everything, it ought to be 35. Then float it before the city council if you want to. But don't just decide that you're not going to do that. Lead a just life. Follow the laws. Moderation is kind of like temperance, isn't it? He extended temperance from food to include everything under moderation. Cleanliness, that's another one that I've stopped preaching and started meddling. Cleanliness and order, to me, are indistinguishable. Cleanliness and order are the same word to me. If it's not clean, it's not in order at all to me. I may have mentioned to you that my father would, I grew up in a very clean house. I think I mentioned that. My father would come home, and I don't think I mentioned this, he would come home with some home-churned butter that one of his insurance clients had given him. And the first words out of his mouth would be, we can eat this, they're clean people. He would accept things from people. And of course, he was in their homes. He visited them as an insurance agent. And he would accept things from people very graciously, and then he would dispose of it if he didn't feel like they were clean people. And then he would, God, I'm sure, forgave him for this. He would go back and tell them how much he enjoyed it. Total lie. But there's no reason to hurt people's feelings on that. But cleanliness is both helpful. Too much cleanliness can be dangerous, but cleanliness is both helpful and attractive. I don't want to be around stinky people. And we had some of those people at Duke Power Company. There was a floor in the Wachovia Bank building. It was 34 floors tall, and we had a floor that was filled with nothing, and I'm going to be racist, I'm sorry. It's filled with nothing but East Indian nuclear engineers. There was a sign on the wall when you got off the elevator that said, you will take a bath at least once a week or you will not work here. Whew. Because when you came off that elevator, you almost just wanted to get back on the elevator and go downstairs. It was crazy. Tranquility, you need peace. It's one of the most important things in life is to achieve some kind of peace. And we can get that through Jesus Christ. We need to rely on the peace of God that passes all understanding. Humility, as I've told you many, many times before, I am most proud of that characteristic in myself. It's one of my best characteristics, right? And I told you, since that's such a difficult characteristic to achieve, because as soon as you think you've achieved it, you instantly lose it, I suggested to you that you learn to practice love. Again, there comes that one thing. If you can practice love, humility follows automatically. And you don't have to focus on humility. You focus on being a loving person, and that will make you a servant and not looking for accolades and all of this other stuff. Practice love, and that will make you unselfish, which is basically humility, an unselfish person. And now we're done. We're down to chastity. Don't do that, okay? Practice mental and heart chastity, okay? Purity of heart and mind, and all of those other things will follow, will it not? Yes, dear?
Well,
yes.
These other things will be added.
They will be added to you. That's an excellent point. And if you seek the Lord and Him, all these other things that you need will be added to you. Okay, closing benediction. May the Spirit guide you into a greater appreciation of the benefits and practices of the virtuous life. To the glory of God the Father and our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.